Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. Albedo, having finished greeting her master who had just returned from the elven country in the frozen prison, returned to her master's quarters and resumed her work. Her workload had increased with the destruction of the kingdom and its vast territories placed under their control. However, Albedo possessed a talent for internal administration, so it wasn't a problem that she had to rack her brain over. As a result of a majority of the cities being razed to the ground, the distressing problems their occupation policy in particular had also been reduced to ashes. For that reason, Albedo was using a large part of her brain's resources to review the creation of a manual they could use in the occupation policies for each of the various countries when they would eventually be placed under their rule in the future. While it might be possible to scale the one they used in Erantal to the level of nations, it was not difficult to imagine kinks forming in the process of broadening the scale and scope of it. In the end, it was better to just apply the methods for administrating a city to the cities, and the ones for administrating a state to the states from the beginning to avoid mistakes in the distant future. Of course, she didn't believe that they could apply those policies as they were in every country. If the races were different, then the cultures and other elements would also differ greatly. Still, they should be able to use them as a broad framework nevertheless. I'll have Demiurge and Pandora's actor look over the materials I've completed, and after that, I'll need to get Ainz's approval. If she borrowed the wisdom of those two, the model she had made would become even better. I could make use of that girl, couldn't I? It was a fact that it would be faster to have her own master, who was full of wisdom and intelligence, look them over right from start. He would be able to perceive things much deeper than those two, but there was no way she could approve of proposing something that had its problems laid clear at a glance in her position as the guardian overseer. While thinking about that and other things, she tidied up her documents. Albedo, report to the frozen prison immediately. The sudden message made Albedo jump in surprise. She sensed a burning rage in her master's thoughts. Once one reached a certain level range, a resistance to mind control was essential. It was obvious that depending on the time and situation, being charmed or controlled could instantaneously lead to defeat. There were no floor guardians who hadn't taken countermeasures against those effects. In spite of that, although it was slight, the reason why Albedo fell panicked was because even though external psychic effects were ineffective on her, the same was not the case for the emotions gushing out from inside her. She had been found out. There was an affair she had been carrying out off the record from her master. Could it have been discovered? Had Demiurge gotten wind of it and reported it to their master after all? However, it was still in the experimental stage. She hadn't put it into full-scale operation. Would that much rage be directed at her in spite of that? Still, that was the only thing that she could think of that would cause him to direct feelings of anger against her. She didn't know. Albedo hurriedly activated the ring's power and headed to the frozen prison. Her master was standing in front of the cage of a half-elf they had captured in the elven country. Behind him was the area guardian Uranus and the figures of Aura and Mare. Her master's expression was no different from normal. Nonetheless, she could feel an intense fury radiating from him. Albedo flew to the feet of her master and immediately prostrated herself before him. My deepest apologies. What's wrong? From that baffled-sounding voice, she instantly realized that the source of her master's anger was different than what she had thought. That being the case, prostrating herself had been a bad move. But she had been thinking about what sort of excuse to make just before she came here. Even though their master was wiser than her, she believed that with enough time spent, her plans could rival even him. I hope I can pull this off. If there is something that Ainz is offended by, or has angered him, within Nazarick, then it is all the fault of the guardian overseers, dissatisfactory work. I also feel bad for Tabulous Merdina-sama. Therefore, I believe the most appropriate thing for me to do is bow like this and apologize. No, you're wrong, Albedo. Let me first correct your misunderstanding. This anger is not directed at Nazarick. A sigh of relief spilled out of Albedo. It wasn't an act, it was the real thing. If that is the case, then what in the world has happened? Before that, could you raise your head, or rather, stand up? I don't really like seeing you, who has done nothing wrong, prostrating yourself. Thank you very much, Ainz-sama. While announcing her gratitude, Albedo stood up. She was a little concerned about the looks of suspicion that had appeared on Aura and Mare's faces for a moment, but right now there was something more important than that. Then what sort of information from that prisoner of war has earned Ainz-sama's displeasure? She was talking about using control amnesia to collect information. The explanation she had received was that even if her master, who had accumulated a lot of practice using it, were to search through memories, spanning over a long period of time, just taking glances at them would take weeks of time. If he were to take a detailed look in order to obtain important information, it would require years of time, and if one were to go so far as to alter or falsify memories, it would take decades. There might be a lot of people who would think that viewing memories was a form of interrogation, where obtaining false evidence was impossible, but the information that was acquired was nothing more than what was the truth for that individual. It goes without saying that it was more than possible that even that individual had been deceived. If you tried to get confirmation, you couldn't trust them as an information source without peering into the memories of multiple people. If you were to do that, then no matter how much time you have, it would never be enough. Ultimately, choosing a much simpler method of acquiring information was more realistic, her master had grumbled. It was the same for modifying memories. For example, if her master had burned a certain village to the ground and the surviving inhabitant of that village, a blasphemous and malicious man who sought power, and although it would be absolutely impossible, managed to ascend to a level high enough that they would be able to injure her master. It's wrong to think that he could be used after they had solved the problem, by wiping away his memory about her master being the one who burned the village. While that inhabitant of the village lived his life to seek out the power to take revenge, he would probably talk to someone about his grudge against her master. If you didn't erase everything up till that point, a huge inconsistency would be born within that man. Because although he wouldn't remember who had burned his village, the memory that, over a drink, he had talked about how my village was burned down by an undead named Ainz would still remain. However, it appeared they had tried to use it because it was convenient to gather information, even while the prisoner of war was unconscious. It's shelter. From those few words, she was able to guess almost everything that was to come. Who is that woman affiliated with? Albedo. Yes. Albedo knelt down on one knee. Drop everything you're working on right now, except for those matters related to the defense of Nazarick. We are going to utterly annihilate the theocracy immediately. This is a fight they picked with us. We will have to accept their challenge properly. Don't you agree? His tone was gentle. However, the emotions deep inside his voice were the complete opposite. How long had it been since you last showed this much rage? Yes. I believe it is exactly as you say. I will immediately relay your orders to all of the floor guardians and transition to making preparations for war. Very well. Do it at once, Albedo. At once. Albedo bowed deeply, trembling at her master's gentle tone.